where does it hold? Well, Mani had the power to give of himself to Sarah. Agree? Without that, be no relationship. He had the power to give himself to Sarah, which is the power to be possessed by Sarah if she accepts it. She may not accept it, but if she accepts it, then that's a relationship. Then it's the mind that gives itself to the soul, and so it has the power to know. Then that means, you see, it's not the soul that has the power to give itself to the mind in order to know. Therefore, it is not reversible. It is not reversible. Therefore, the mind is the cause, the primary cause, and therefore has more power, and therefore has a more privileged position, because it has the power to give of itself to the soul so that now the soul can know. This is sometimes described in that great moment in history, right, when human beings first came into possession of language, whether it was sign language or verbal language. At that moment, something had to awake. The mind had to awake in a totally new way. It had to be there potentially. There must have been something that had to stir it up. There must have been some activity that preceded, that awoke it, that brought it from being just an internal potential power to emerge outward and fulfill its potential. Therefore, the mind has a vast potential. It has an internal power to remain in itself, to function within itself. It also has an activity that proceeds from it as it seeks to know. That itself has a power. Now, what can we do with this? Notice every time we're making any statements, we go back to Mani and Sarah, don't we? He had to have the direction. He made the step, right? First he had to be contained within himself, had to have a certain power, internal power, had to be willing to go external. He had to fulfill an idea in his own mind. He had to then gather the necessary power for that activity to proceed. He had to be willing to act out on the model that he had, that then allowed a relationship to emerge. She, on the other hand, notice we can talk about the same thing as she's the possessor. Right? We can talk about her as a possessor in the same way we can talk about the soul then possesses mind. Right? It possesses mind, and now it can function through knowing. Now, big step now. Here we go. Now, mind, if it has power, and an activity proceeds from it, if it has power, and if it has an activity that proceeds from it, anything that has a power, remember what we said, anything at all must have a power in order to be. And if it then has more than an internal power, has an external power, then it has an activity. Well then, if mind then has a power and activity, then you can say, you know what, it exists. Now I don't want to use the word exist, I want to use another word which is similar to it. It has being, which is a fancy word for exist. Therefore, mind exists. But by the way, also the soul that possesses the mind, it too has a power, it too has an activity, it too can be a cause, therefore it too has being. Or exists. Therefore, all the souls that possess mind have being, and all souls. Well, do you know what that also means? That means all individual minds that are possessed by each soul, they must have being too. Oh, look here. Notice what we have now. We can now extend this. Right? And we could repeat the same thing, right? Mind, 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 soul. So now we can say, all the souls that possess mind, they have being, and all the individual minds has being. Well, there's really a great statement. I wonder whether I wrote it down. Okay, give me a chance to talk about it. It's a great statement of Proclus, and I have found a way of expressing it today that's somewhat different, so I'd like to use it. I got this in a coffee shop. So, let's see whether you notice something curious about it. I'm going to see whether this can be said to be a principle. See, each one of these minds gives itself to a soul. Each one of these minds, we've been saying, since we say it for one thing, we can say it for all. Then, everything then which gives such a thing to others must, here it is, must be that which it gives to others. Now notice this is very abstract. So everything, whatever it is, must be that which it gives to others. So anything that gives something to others freely, it must be that which it gives to others. So let's try it now. All right, that's my big statement. If the mind, individual mind, gives itself to each soul, then we're saying then there must be something called mind, independent of all minds, independent of all particular minds, since